Pentatonic scales are everywhere, from jazz to blues to rock to funk. So being able to understand them, know the theory behind them, how to create pentatonic scales, and more importantly, how to actually apply pentatonic scales to our bass playing so we can create cool bass lines and bass fills is key to becoming a better bass player. It's Jazz here from the bassmastermind.com. Welcome back to my channel. As I said in the intro today, I'm going to do a full breakdown of the pentatonic scale. I think I'm going to call this something like the ultimate guide to pentatonics, because we're going to go right from the basics to how you can actually use pentatonics to even memorize the notes on the fingerboard, and then also how we can apply pentatonics to bass lines, bass fills, and we'll look at some example bass lines as well. So if you want to grab the pentatonic worksheet I've designed for this lesson, it's in my free Facebook group for bass players. The link's below this video. You can join the Facebook group and get access to this lesson with the pentatonics worksheet, to other free bass resources. We've got free bass courses in there, and obviously a really cool community of bass players from around the world. It's completely free to join the Facebook group, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just click the link below and become part of the Bass Master community. So with all of that said, let's dive into today's lesson and start learning everything about pentatonic scales. So first of all, what are pentatonic scales? Well, I would consider a pentatonic scale as a 5-note scale. As you can imagine, there are lots of pentatonic scales. There are more advanced ones that are less common, but we're going to really focus on 2 types of pentatonic scales today. And then at the end of this lesson, I'm actually going to show you another really cool scale that's kind of similar to the pentatonic scale, and it's like a little bonus thing that you can use in your bass lines. So the 2 pentatonic scales I want to teach you today is what's called the major pentatonic scale and then the minor pentatonic scale. I'm going to break this all down step by step, don't worry. And if you already know how to create these 2 scales, then just skip this part of the video where I talk more about how to apply it and use it to memorize the fingerboard. Now, to create pentatonic scales is super easy. If you know your major scales and your minor scales, then you'll be able to create your pentatonic scales. So we're going to do things in C. As always, it's a nice key to really start with. So we're going to play our C major scale in the classic position that everyone knows. So 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. I'm going to do 1 finger per fret. So that's our C major scale. Now if we assign a number to each one of those notes, so C is 1, D is 2, and then we'll continue that. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have the octave, which I would call 1 again. So we have 7 notes in the C major scale. So the C major scale has 7 notes. The C major pentatonic scale has 5 notes. So there are 2 notes that we need to get rid of. So the 2 notes we need to get rid of are the 7th, which is a B, and the 4th, which is an F. So now play your C major scale without the 4th note and the 7th note. So we have C, D, 2, E, 3. Don't play the 4th note, avoid that, and play the 5th note. So, yeah, and then we got the 6th, and then avoid the 7th, don't play the 7th note, and then we can play our octave on top, or the root again. So, now as far as the fingering in the left hand, I'm doing more of a 1 finger per fret system for more like scales and things like this. So if you're doing a bass line like December 63, then I would do more of a 1 finger per fret, so assigning 1 finger to each fret. Fairly simple. And then for things like more pentatonic scales, things that bass lines like where it's using more pentatonic kind of box shapes, I would use what's called the Samandal technique, which is a double bass technique, where you essentially take your 1st and 4th finger. I'm using those fingers primarily, and then I'm also using my 2nd finger. And you're not using your 3rd finger really, you're using that 3rd finger to help out the pinky. So So when we come to learn our pentatonics, I'm using more of a 1 4 1 4 1 4, and then I'm doing a bit more position shifting as we work up the neck. So that's something to really bear in mind for more pentatonic-y kind of playing. Pentatonic-y, yeah, that's definitely a word. For that style of playing, I'm using more of like a Samandal technique, which is more like a boxy shape. You'll start seeing boxes on the fingerboard, more like lines, maybe even walking bass kind of stuff. You'll use more of a one finger per fret. So that's something to bear in mind as we go through this video. So now we know the theory behind a major pentatonic scale. Let's look at a bass line that uses the pentatonic scale. I was trying to think of one off the top of my head, and one that came to mind was What's Going On by Marvin Gaye with James Jamerson on bass. I'll play the bass line for you first. So and if you're going proper James Jamerson, you can be doing the one finger in the right hand, but we're not covering that today. You can see here that he's using, so we're in E, so we're using the first note, and then he's using the fifth, the sixth, and then going back up to the root again. And I would really consider that kind of shape, that Motown-y shape, as a major pentatonic scale. So what we can do is actually take that bass line, and as we know it's an E major, we can play our E major pentatonic scale and start adding in some cool notes. Obviously this is going to take some time. I'll just demonstrate it just so you can get the sound in your ear, and then later on in this lesson we'll look at how we can actually start creating these really cool bass lines. So if we take that simple What's Going On bass line, so 3 4, and then if we start adding in some of the notes of the major pentatonic scale, the E major pentatonic scale, we can start coming up with stuff like this. And you can kind of see how pentatonic scales can become really, really fun. And once you start knowing where the notes are on the fingerboard, and we're going to cover that later in this video. So the other pentatonic scale that I really want you to learn is the minor pentatonic scale. So again, all we're going to do is take our minor scale, our natural minor scales. So we're going to do this in C. I'm going to put my first finger on the 3rd fret of the A string and a one finger per fret. So we have 1 3 4 1 3 4 1 3, with the notes being C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. That's our C natural minor scale. And now all we're going to do to create a C minor pentatonic scale, so we have 7 notes there, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and all we're going to do is get rid of the 2nd note and the 6th note. So the 2nd note is a D, and the 6th note, 1 2 3 4 5 6, is an A flat. So we get rid of these 2 notes, and then ta-da! You've created a C minor pentatonic scale. So play the C minor scale without the 2nd degree of the scale and the 6th degree. So we're going to avoid those. So C, 1, okay, don't play the 2nd, 3rd, 4, and then we've got the 5th, and then we've got the 7th. Then we can put the octave on top. And again, I'm using that Samandal technique as we're doing pentatonic, so I'm using that 1 4 1 4 kind of boxy shape. So 1 4 1 4 1 4. But for a C minor scale, I'm using one finger per fret. So 1 3 4 1 3 4 1 3. And then a pentatonic scale is more of a 1 4 1 4 1 4, and we'll have to do some more position shifting later on. I was trying to think of an example of a bass line that uses the minor pentatonic scale. I mean, there are loads out there, but one that came to mind is Lady Marmalade. I'm pretty sure the original is in G, so we're going to use the G minor pentatonic scale to play this bass line. So now you've got the theory behind the minor pentatonic scale. We need to hear it in a musical context. So here's Lady Marmalade. So you can hear that real minor pentatonic shape, especially when it goes up to that B flat, which is the minor third of G. And I do a little squiggle, I think, on that. And that's just one example of a minor pentatonic scale in a musical context. So how can we use these pentatonic scales to create bass lines and bass fills and all that cool stuff? The key to being able to do all this kind of pentatonic, all of that kind of pentatonic, like gospel stuff, I mean, it's just everywhere, right, this pentatonic scale. But the key to being able to really be free and apply it to bass lines, or even create your own bass lines, is to actually be able to play the pentatonic scale all over the fingerboard, know where all the notes are. So if we have a C major pentatonic scale here, you want to really know where all the notes are in that pentatonic scale, so you can be super free with the scale and start creating some cool bass lines. And the way to do that is an exercise that I call the Zig Zag Pentatonic Exercise. I'm sure someone else has come up with this exercise and I stole it from somewhere or some teacher back in the past, but it's really helped me as far as understanding where all the notes are in the pentatonic scale. And the key thing with this is getting away from that initial shape that we just learned. So this shape, if the bass line is if it's in that position, that's great, you got it. But what happens if the bass line goes out of that position? You're kind of stuck, you don't know where the notes are. So this exercise is going to take a while to get down. It might take you a few months to really be able to implement it correctly, but if you practice it, this exercise super slow, I promise you by the end you'll be able to know where all the notes are as far as the different pentatonic scales. So what we're going to do is just take that C major pentatonic scale, and we really want to know what the notes are. So let's say the notes out loud while we play them. So we have a C, a D, an E, a G, and an A. And obviously it repeats on the C, but those are the 5 notes of the C major pentatonic scale. To get away from that initial shape and be able to be really free and play all these kind of bass licks and bass fills and create our own pentatonic bass lines, we want to kind of do this like zigzag motion as we go up the neck. And we want to start from the lowest note in that pentatonic scale. So the lowest note in that pentatonic scale is an E. We have an open E string. The next note in a C major pentatonic scale is a G. And then we would play an open A string. So we've just played the C major pentatonic scale in this little position here. So all we've done is taken the C major pentatonic scale and instead of playing it in the classic position starting on the root, we don't really want to do that. We want to get away from the root. We want to know where all the notes are. So we actually want to start the pentatonic scale from the lowest note to the highest note in that area of the fingerboard. So, and then what you would do, why it's called a zigzag exercise, is because you go up to the next note and then you go back down. So I'll start the exercise again super slowly. And then 4th finger, 4, 1, 4, 1. And you'll see that's the classic shape we learnt, but we want to go right down to the bottom so we know all the notes. So we'll continue the pentatonic scale. We've got an A and we've got a G. And then what we do is we shift this first finger up. So now we're playing an A, and then we go up the major pentatonic scale in this position. So you can see we went up in this position, down in the next position, up in this position, down. And that's the kind of zigzag part of this exercise. So I'll play the whole exercise right up to the 12th fret. So next position, but going down, and then we shift up, and then shift up with your 4th finger, and then shift up 1st finger, and then if you want to come back down, you would shift down with your 4th finger, so So this is great for fretboard memorization, this is great for position shifting, and this is great for just learning the notes of each pentatonic scale. Of course, I'm just doing it in C. There are 12 keys. You can do them in any order. I mean, I like to do them around a cycle of fourths or fifths. So I'd probably go to F next. So then I would do the same exercise. And I would continue that. And again, this is probably going to take a while, but what you'll find is if there's any gaps in your fretboard kind of knowledge, then this is really going to help, and it's going to be a really practical way of memorizing the fingerboard, because then once you've got this shape, going back to the C major pentatonic scale, if I go, okay, I'm on the C here on the root, so I'm playing the root, and if I want to do some sort of bass thing, you see how I went from here, so I am adding some of that, ignore that for now. It's just the main notes here, so we got, it was something like that, but I can do variations of it, right? But what's really important to note is that I can be super free with this pentatonic scale, because I've practiced the Zig Zag Pentatonic Exercise. I know it's a super funny name, but it's a really useful exercise. And it doesn't have to be rigid as well, like, you know, playing it with the metronome. What I would actually suggest is not playing it with the metronome. First of all, just focusing on the notes. If it takes a little bit longer to find the next note, that's okay. Just focus on the notes first and then focus on the rhythm or playing it with a metronome. So I would practice it super slow because you're focusing more on the harmony or the notes. And this is going to take a while. And then you think, okay, what finger am I using? Okay, I'm going to the fourth finger. And that's another note of the major pentatonic scale. That's how I'd go about this exercise. And then after you feel comfortable about where the notes are, that's when I would add in, say, a metronome at like 60 BPM. So you got like 1, 2, 3, you know, something super slow, but only once you feel comfortable with the notes. I would practice it out of time first and then practice it in time after you feel comfortable about where the actual notes are. Now, the sneaky extra scale that I really want to share with you is what's called the blues scale. And I think a lot of people will know what this scale is, but how I like to think about it is actually, so we're going to take our C minor pentatonic scale. If you remember that, we've got a C, E flat, F, G, B flat, and then the octave on top. And all we're going to do is add a flat 5, or it could be a sharp 4. So we have a C, E flat, which is like the 3rd degree of the scale, the 4th degree of the scale, and then we go 1 fret up. We've got this weird note. It sounds pretty weird. And then we've got the 5th, which is 1 fret up again. So we got the fingering I would use is 1, 4, 1, 2, 4, more of a samandal technique, and then 1, 4. Now, if I'm playing and creating bass lines using this scale, I wouldn't go I mean, maybe in like a fusion context, I don't know. I mean, it could sound cool, but generally, if we're playing like poppy kind of Motown stuff or blues or funky stuff like that, we don't really want to hang on this note. Some people refer to this note as the blue note, and we don't really want to hang on that note because it sounds a bit dissonant to the actual tonic or the root of the chord, which is a C. It sounds a little bit weird. So what I would probably do is something like something like that. So again, I'm using more of that samandal technique. So I'm doing like a trill thing and then sliding down. So I'm not really hanging on that blue note, because if I did, it would sound slightly weird. These things are all to do with taste and what you like. What I really want to share with you is a bass line that uses the blues scale. The bass line is Sunshine of Your Love. I think the original is in D minor, so we've just gone up a tone from where we were. And the bass line sounds like this. You can see how it's perfectly outlining. Got that blue note there. It's perfectly outlining the D minor blues scale. So that's a really cool bass line to learn if you want to get the sound of the blues scale inside your head. But as you can see, it's just one note different to the minor pentatonic scale. So minor pentatonic scale, and then we got the D minor blues scale. If you can really understand these core scales, it's going to serve you well when it comes to playing any like Western music, as far as like funk, rock, soul, pop, all of that kind of stuff. If you can really get down the major scale, that's probably the most important. A lot of stuff is based on the major scale. The minor scale, if you can get down the major pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, and the blues scale, you're going to be able to cover a lot of ground with just those scales. And if you can memorize those scales using that Zig Zag exercise, and if you can memorize all of those scales in all 12 keys over the fingerboard, it's a big task, but if you can really do that, you know, using this exercise that I showed you, then it's really, really gonna, I can't actually explain how much that's gonna help you as far as understanding theory, understanding how to create bass lines, looking at bass lines and analyzing them, creating your own bass lines, learning the fingerboard, having a clean position shift. I mean, there's just so many advantages to being able to play that exercise and also learn those scales that I listed. So major scale, major pentatonic scale, minor pentatonic scale, and blues scale. So if you can get those down in all 12 keys across the fingerboard, that's awesome. Let me know in the comments once you got that down. It's definitely a challenge, but like I said, there's really two stages to practicing these kind of exercises. Super slow, out of time. Let your brain catch up to where you're playing and what fingering you're using and what the notes are. And then the next stage is to just practice it super slow with a metronome, with a good time fill, good, nice, fat tone. As far as creating bass lines with pentatonic scales, I've got a couple of tips. First one is just listen to the kick drum and just copy the rhythm of the kick drum. So if the kick drum's going something like boom, ka, boom, boom. Yeah, if you listen to the kick drum and then you use the theory that you've learned from this lesson, so let's take a C minor pentatonic scale. So say we've got a C minor chord and we've got the kick drum pattern going boom, ka, boom, boom. Just use the notes from the C minor pentatonic scale. So it could be something like boom, ka, boom, 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 ka, boom, 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 ka, boom. All I did there was just C minor pentatonic scale, and I matched the rhythm to the kick drum. So that's kind of tip number one. Tip number two is a quote that I love from Miles Davis, which is, first you imitate, then you innovate. So essentially what that means is first you learn all these super cool bass lines, like say Lady Marmalade, and then you innovate. So you use the concept maybe, or the notes or the rhythm from that bass line and start creating your own bass line. So it could sound something like I just came up with that quickly, but that's just an example how you can do what Miles Davis is explaining, where you imitate, so you copy and you learn these awesome songs that have some really cool pentatonic things, or you can come up with your own thing. My camera died, so I'm on my laptop now, and I really wanted to share the third tip about creating bass lines. So we got one, listen to the kick drum, match the rhythm, and use the theory that you've learned from this lesson, say pentatonic scales, to create bass lines. Number two is that quote from Miles Davis: first you imitate, then you innovate. And then number three is try to create singable or memorable bass lines. And you can think of the bass line as a counter melody to the vocal melody, or if it's on a sax or trumpet. So think of bass lines as melodies as well. And if you can sing it, then it's probably going to be memorable. So those three tips as far as creating bass lines with pentatonics. Now, obviously, I'm only scratching the surface as far as pentatonics. And if you do want to take that to the next level and get access to some free online courses for bass players, some are about technique, some are about pentatonics and theory, and creating your own bass lines, then make sure to click that link below to join my free Facebook group for bass players. And it's a great place to get all your bass related questions answered. So click the link below to join. Check out this video next because I think it's really going to help you. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you next week.